Please listen carefully.
Welcome to the Retail Conversations podcast. This is Morten Max. Today I will be speaking with Bård Kvamme. Bård is a true retailer with more than 20 years of working in the industry. Almost born and raised, Bård has a long record of high performance in different retail brands. He spent many years in bestseller in different roles, one of them being the country manager for a long list of stores in a big partner organization, where we also had a few years as colleagues. Also, he has worked in Humac and Æblehuset, taking on the responsibility as business development manager and other roles as well. His current position is the global retail director for Stokke. Just to let you know, this conversation is recorded on Skype, and even though I find the quality doable, there are some issues here that I will learn to handle better in future episodes, so sorry about that. Basically, I want to find a balance of not making the concept too well polished, if that makes any sense. Now, after we recorded the conversation, the information that Bård is leaving Stokke has come out. We do, however, spend the majority of our conversation talking about other topics than Stokke, so this is just bonus information for you. To unpack the conversation we had, we spent roughly the first half hour talking about Bård's background, wrapped around his own guide to how you achieve personal success in business. We then start addressing the state of the union in retail, followed by Bård's advice to retailers today, with people being the key resource. And we end up talking about a selection of Bård's favorite companies to follow in the future. And all of us also get an invitation to Korea, so listen carefully. I found this to be a very insightful conversation from a true retail profile that in my book can be of great inspiration to other aspiring retailers out there. So without further small talk, I give you Bård Kvamme. I am here with Bård Kvamme. Bård, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I have to say, first and foremost, Bård, that I've been looking very much forward to this conversation for many reasons actually. We used to work together in bestseller a couple of years ago. Some years ago, I have to say now, but our paths did actually cross a few times back then. And I don't recall actually, Bård, when we had our first encounter or first meet in face-to-face, but I do remember that it was linked to some training activities, maybe in Norway where you were located. Can you remember when we met the first time?
Ooh, I'm not sure, Morten, but probably some years ago. And of course, you were responsible for the training in bestseller. I was responsible for a lot of running a lot of shops. So probably some time ago.
But the very interesting thing was that throughout the years that we were, you could say, colleagues, even though we didn't work together on a daily basis, I knew you and heard of you only as a very respected and dedicated profile in the company. And you work for an internal partner in bestseller that was located in Norway, right? So even though I was located in Denmark, your name and capabilities were well known throughout the business.
Thank you very much, Morten, for the nice words. Of course, I had a really long background in bestseller. I worked almost, I think, 11 years combined in the company. So it was, I have to say, bestseller was a fantastic journey for me. I think 95% of everything I know I've learned in bestseller. So it was really a fantastic place to be, and a lot of good colleagues. Some of them are still in bestseller. You and me, we have moved to other places, but simply a great company to, I would say, almost I've been born and raised in bestseller in many ways.
But I'm sure that and that we have a lot of things we can talk about. And prior to this conversation, we made a little list of topics we would like to talk about. So before we start digging into all the lovely things within retail, I think it would be very nice for not only myself but also for the listeners of this podcast to get a little bit of an insight into your background and the journey you have been on to where you are now.
Yeah, to say something about myself, where I'm today, of course, I'm 38 years old now, 2 kids living in Oslo. Talking about my retail career, I think it goes all the way back to when I was 12 or 13. And then I started having this newspaper route that I did every morning. And I suddenly realized that, if I was able to do 2 routes, I can have double payment. But that actually meant that I had to get up 5 o'clock in the morning. So my parents weren't too happy about me getting up at 5 o'clock before school. And then I also started doing the newspapers on Sundays. So that was like a different newspaper every Sunday, because the normal one was only the normal week plus Saturday. And then I did a Sunday newspaper on Sunday.
What should you have spent the one day on if you didn't want to do the newspaper?
I don't think my parents was too happy about it, but I kind of realized that if I think the learning for me was that if I kind of take the possibilities which are like right in front of me and I work hard, there will be other possibilities and there will be new possibilities, and you can able to grow with the possibilities as you get along the way. So I did that for a couple of years. Then I actually started for Jack & Jones, working in shops when I was 16. I started as a salesperson, I think, for working for a franchisee of bestseller called Trond Grønhaug. And we had a really, really good shop manager. And the shop manager was actually, teaching me a lot of stuff and showing me to do stuff. And I got to know merchandising a little bit. I'm still not really good at it, but I know a little bit about it. But mainly they were coaching me and training me on how to sell and how to treat customers, how to talk to customers, how to do upselling, stuff like this. And that was actually a really, really good school for me to start in. So I worked for different shops in the area for probably in part-time, same time I was going to school for a couple of years. When I was finished in school and after I was in military, I also got an opportunity to be a shop manager in Jack & Jones in Stavanger, which was a great opportunity for me. I think at the time, Jack & Jones in Stavanger was one of the biggest Jack & Jones shops in Norway. And of course, I was the shop manager, but I was also the youngest person in the staff, which was an interesting learning also to lead and manage people who are, of course, more experienced than you. But being able to build a good team and to understand the retail business, and I think also the franchisee Trond Grønhaug, which is still a franchisee and bestseller today, is also a really, really strong retailer with and highly focused on operations and running good stores. So that was kind of my introduction to retail, I would say. The next step is a little bit special, a little bit funny. When I was a shop manager in Stavanger, I attended an IT course with the internal bestseller IT department. And back then it was a guy named Jens Henrik Søndergaard and Kai Bråten, I remember, 2 guys. And they were running this training. And I think I did pretty well in that training because half a year later they called me and said, "You want to start working with us within the IT department?" And I kind of said, guys, I don't have any IT background. And I said, yeah, we like you, and we will show you. So this is actually my start in bestseller, the main company bestseller. I went to Denmark, got a contract, and I mainly spent the next 12, 13 months traveling around. I was with bestseller doing a lot of the shops in the Middle East in the beginning, Beirut and Qatar. And we were traveling around, installing the IT systems, but also teaching people how to use the POS system, how to operate it, and also kind of showing all the features, so the new features they could use with the system. So I did that for a little bit over 1 year. Then suddenly one day, my country manager, Øyvind Hauge, he came to me and said that, we have a sales position available. So if you're interested in moving into sales, you can stay where you are, but we have a sales position. And if you're interested, you could move over there. I still think I'm probably the only person in Bestseller up until today that has moved from IT to sales. That's probably probably not a very normal career path, I would say. But then I moved into sales. I worked for a bestseller brand named Selected for I think roughly 6 years. I was running my small one-person company on the west coast of Norway, selling to retail shops, but mostly to wholesale customers all over the west coast. And of course, that was a big learning for me. First of all, running my own company, paying taxes, controlling VAT, stuff like this, but also being responsible for your own success very clearly. So I did that for 6 years. Then I was a sales manager in Bestseller for the Selected brand for 1.5 years. And then I got the opportunity to start in Bestseller retail, as you mentioned earlier. So I was a country manager for the Norwegian shops for 3 years, which was also a really, really big job and a great learning for me.
It seems like the only role you have not had in Bestseller is kind of like designing the clothes itself.
I think in the beginning we actually did a lot of funny and bad designs. I think Bestseller is on a totally different level now than this is probably this is starting to be a long time ago. But we did a lot of traveling around, looking at competitors, trying to invent trendy designs. But I think it's better to leave that to the experts for sure, not to the amateurs. That is probably a good idea.
But then at one point the cord was cut. Then you found another world outside of Bestseller.
Yeah, it was actually a little bit strange. I was when I was in Bestseller retail for 3 years. I was having a really good time. It was a very good place for me to be. I liked my colleagues. I liked the brands I was working with. We had good development with the stores. But then I was contacted by a headhunter who wanted to speak to me about Apple premium reseller named UMAC, which was then in Norway and Denmark. And I had a coffee with headhunter. I didn't really have any big expectations, but I think he did a really good selling. And of course, I've always been a big fan of Apple products and really curious about Apple retail, how they work. So after a couple of meetings, I decided to move over to UMAC and Apple. And I think also, even though Bestseller was a fantastic place to be, and I have almost everything I know from Bestseller. I think also 11 years, then it's probably also time. Maybe it's time to do something else, kind of to be sure that you continue to develop and you learn more. So then I stayed in UMAC for 2.5 years. UMAC was a bit of a difficult case, being a small retailer in working with Apple is difficult. Apple has very low margins, but also very high standards when it comes to shop fitting, and also the number of salespeople you have to have on the floor. So high standards and low margin is normally it's a difficult combination in a way. But we were able to turn the company around. When I started, we had 5 shops, and 2.5 years later, we had 10 shops, and we were able to make the small company profitable. We had a turnover of roughly around 300 million NOK in the end. And then what happened is that our main competitor, Applehuset, I think they thought that UMAC is getting a little bit too big now, so they felt like this is really the time to step in and take over the company. So after 2.5 years in UMAC, the company was acquired by Applehuset, So then I moved over to Appaloosa and worked in Appaloosa for 1.5 years as a business development manager, which Appaloosa is also a very nice company with nice people. But then, of course, a bigger scale, roughly about 1 billion NOK in turnover. And of course, extremely exciting and interesting to work closely with Apple when it comes to retail standards, training, people development, product launches. Everything Apple does is almost like a study in retail. So that is also a really good school to work closely with Apple for sure. And my latest journey, after working closely. UMAC and Appaloosa closely 4 years with Apple. I got an opportunity to move into a Norwegian company called Stokke. Stokke is of course most famous for the Trip Trap chair, which I think is almost like a iconic world product. Everyone knows it, no matter where you go. So I have been working 2 years now for Stokke as a global retail director, and actually I was hired to develop retail in Stokke and kind of taking it from a typical wholesale level. I would say Stokke were at a typical wholesale level where the company was delivering the products to the retailers, doing some podias and some in-store print frames, but not really having a plan for anything more when it comes to personnel, selling, displays. Yeah, no plan at all. So the mission has been kind of to develop the retail setup to make sure that Stokke is a retailer with own stores, but also is able to create a better retail presence with partners all over the world. And Stokke is represented in roughly 80 countries. High focus markets like China, Japan, Korea, which are really, really important markets, both with high chairs, but also with strollers for Stokke. So this has been my last 2 years, developing retail formats and also establishing own stores for Stokke.
And from what you've just explained about that journey, it seems like you have had a really interesting effect on the development of Stokke, because it seems like you have been nominated in this MAPIC Awards that will happen later this year in Cannes.
Yeah, that was actually a news we received last week, which was like a tremendous boost, both for me, but also for my whole team, my global team. So we were nominated at the MAPIC Awards in Cannes later in November for Best New Retail Concept. I don't think any Norwegian retailer has ever been nominated before in MAPIC. And of course, that will also bring a lot of attention and a lot of PR around Stokke and the retail concepts. I think this is it's a great achievement, but it's also a great opportunity to tell people about the concept, how we think, how it's developed, and also, of course, a great opportunity for Stokke to develop more stores and get to know more real estate people and retailers and agents. So it's we are very, very happy about that achievement.
Yeah, congratulations on that. So based on this journey of and your background in retail throughout many years, when you look back and reflect on the achievements you've had and stuff like that, what has brought you to where you are? What are the key principles and mindset behind it?
Oh, it's a difficult question to answer. But if I try to reflect on everything I've done, and going all the way back to delivering newspapers, to me, I think it's still about getting up early in the morning, working hard. Try to be nice to people, try to get people to work together. And of course, you need to be driven by opportunities. You need to look for the next opportunity. You need to take the opportunities which are in front of you. Be ambitious, of course, on behalf of yourself, but also on behalf of the company and the team you have. And I would say, like, keep on developing. I think this is like the main thing also, and probably we're going to talk about this later, but with future with retail, you have to keep on developing. And I think it's, what was the perfect knowledge yesterday is not going to be the perfect knowledge next week. You have to keep on developing and keep on moving, I think. And I've been lucky to work in really good systems, with bestseller, with Apple, now with Stokke, strong systems with a lot of competent people, and there's also a lot of learning you can take from more experienced colleagues or colleagues with different approaches or different backgrounds. But of course, the learning from bestseller and Apple is of course kind of my retail knowledge, I would say.
Well, I think for many of, especially for me as well, but for many of the listeners, hopefully they will find a lot of how should I put it? A lot of inspiration in the journey you have been on and are still on, of course. And it seems like you've not only allowed yourself to achieve great things one time in your career so far. It seems like you're repeating that cycle. So I think that is an inspiration to a lot of fellow retailers out there. Say that and you say that getting up early, working hard, try to be nice to people, look for the opportunities, grab them when they come, and keep developing. Those are some of the key things that look at all these years, right?
Absolutely, and I think the part of about getting up early and working hard is kind of it is essential. If you want to achieve something, you need to work hard for it. And of course you cannot just be happy with what you have. Then you're going to be lazy. You have to keep on moving and kind of be curious on the next step and being interested, as I said, in developing. And I think especially with retail nowadays, everything is happening really fast. You need to be close to what's going on, for sure. But I think I was asked in a newspaper article 1 year ago in Norway about what is your advice to young people, and I was just thinking about myself and maybe this newspaper business that I started in is a little bit going out of style because of the internet and internet papers. But still, I think that a lot of young people should try to get in, try to get a job. And if it's at the local Rema 1000 or if it's like a kiosk or whatever it is, I think it's important that people actually, at the same time going to school, but of course get a job, even though it's a small job, to kind of understand how it is to work. And then probably you will also have a good feeling with having a success experience, if it's sale or whatever it is. And then you can actually build on this and you see opportunities within the company. And you see that if you work hard, if you get up early, you will have more opportunities. And I think that is really important things to think about for young people today. That's I'm a little bit worried when I hear about people who are 20 years old and never really had a job before. So I think people should try to work and see how it is and try to get up early and work hard and see what opportunities to get.
I had a friend in my network when we were teenagers, and at that time I was doing 2 newspaper routes as well, and the guy I was splitting the routes with didn't show up half of the days, so I had to do the 2 routes on my own, and of course I didn't got most of the funding, so that was good. But I had a friend back then who actually got a present and allowance from his parents to not get a job. So in relation to what you're saying, I think that reflected on him some years and hit him back in the face a few years later. So that's kind of interesting that we're saying that get out and try and get a job and try and get a feeling of how those processes work.
Absolutely, I think it's essential. We're not going to talk about how to raise a child today, I guess, but I think it's essential for kids to kind of get an understanding that money is not just something you get from your parents. It's actually something that you need to do something to get the money, and I think that is really important learning. And then so it's my advice to all kids or parents would be, let the kids have a part-time job. And I don't think it doesn't really matter where it is. There's a lot of good systems if you go to the grocery industry or if it's like newspapers, just to get in to understand that, if you put in an effort, you will make money. And I think that is and then you can, keep on developing and get a kind of success experience. So I think it's a really important learning.
I think I heard you say it once, but I also read it somewhere in something that you commented on that as many people would also say that people is the key resource for the success that we can have. So I'm sure that you share this conviction. But what is your take on this in terms of working with people in these different roles that you have fulfilled? And how do you work with this?
Yeah,
if I can ask, of
course, it's a big question, but I think of course over the last 10, 15 years I've been a manager, managing people, and of course people are the key resource for everything. I would say, to getting things done, people are the key resource. And I think, we cannot do everything we want to do on our own. We need to build good teams with competent people and highly motivated people. And from what I've learned, of course, highly motivated people will do 3 times as much as people who doesn't care. So to me, it's wherever I go, whatever I do, it's almost every time it's about kind of finding the key people and building the good teams and making sure that my key people are happy. So I know that they will do everything they can to get the job done. So for sure, in retail, of course, there is a lot of talk about we could talk about merchandising, we could talk about digital development, the operational guidelines. There's a lot of things that you can talk about, but it always comes back to the people. And of course, if it doesn't matter how much money you have to invest in a retail concept if the people who are running it are not motivated to do it. So I think it is a key for everyone to develop good teams, and of course competence is extremely important, but also keeping people happy and motivated. From my experience, is also key, and then you will get 3 times the output than you would get if people are just doing it as a job. But if they're committed to the job and they actually enjoy what they're doing, there will be a lot more output.
So if I was an upcoming or new or pretty experienced manager or leader of a team, what would you give me of these are the key elements that I think you should be able to cover and have in focus within these of keeping the teams motivated and stuff like that?
I think it's let's say every time I go into a new role, I work with a new team, and I've had several different teams in the jobs I've done before. I think it's for me is extremely important to, in the beginning, kind of look at the roles I'm looking for. I think a lot of companies still today are moving people around internally, and then you end up having not the right people in the right roles. So to me, I'm always looking at the roles and okay, this role, what is it about? Do I have the people, or do I need to recruit them? And I think also that is a key thing when it comes to having success in a role, that you're actually the right people, the right person for the job. So first of all, creating the right team with the right people. And I'm not the guy who will just take the old team and try to get it working if the people are not the right people for the roles. So when I have the right people in the roles, I will do everything I can to understand who they are and kind of what triggers them. And then I simply will make a plan for how I can be a good coach and a sparring partner, and also how I can develop them. And from my experience, of course, people who feels appreciated and a part of a group, they will also produce a lot more. So it's kind of it's a mix about being a good manager, but also like a people's person, to try to understand what triggers people, who they are, and what motivates them. And I think kind of finding this balance between kind of being a people person and also a manager is key. And sometimes you will not succeed because the people that you're working with are not, they're not motivated. They're not willing to go all the way. And then maybe you need to change some people or get some new ones in. But it's all about creating that group of highly motivated people, and then it's much easier to move forward.
It's kind of interesting. A simplified angle on this is that I had a request for a task in my company, and they wanted me to help them do a sales program throughout a big program for a lot of managers. And I said, okay, I don't know your company. I'm very glad that you have contacted me. But let me ask you this one question to start off with. Based on these number of people that you want to train and develop here, how many of them would you recruit again today if you had to do it? And then there was silence.
Yeah.
And that in some way, in a simplified version, it sums up what you're saying now. I think that start the right place.
Yeah, I think I'm a strong believer in training and running academies and coaching and sparring people. But I think it's also important that sometimes we have to realize that we don't have the right people, and then it's going to be about creating the right group of people. And of course, within sales, I think motivation is very visible within sales. And some people are highly motivated, maybe low on competence. I think in a lot of jobs, what we can learn people is, of course, all the sales skills or the product skills we can teach them. But of course, the attitude and their approach, this is something they have to bring to the table themselves. And if they're not interested or not motivated, it's going to be difficult kind of to get them to be the best salesperson or the best manager if they don't really want to. So it is. It's a good example, Morten, for sure, because they should ask themselves the questions: do we really have the right people? And it could also be in companies. You have the right people, then suddenly the landscape for your business is changing, and then one day you don't have the right people anymore. So I think it's like a continuous thing. It's not about just hiring the right group of people once, but I think you have to look at your group or your team or your company and look at the business and be honest with yourself and say, do I have the right people? Can I develop these people in the right direction, or how should I approach it? And it's like an ongoing thing. It's never stopping.
And I like the angle that you're adding here at the end also, that it, besides the fact that it's an ongoing process, it's also a reflection into yourself and saying, okay, where do I need to adapt here to the landscape that has been changed, So I think that's a very important angle as well.
And it could also be, one approach, talking about being a manager. I think it's also important to understand that, I never met one manager who can do everything. It's also important to realize that, even though you're a good manager, you probably have some limitations when it comes to knowledge or skills. And when you're building a team, of course, I think you should mainly look for a team which is kind of complementary to itself, that you have a skilled team with people who work together. They shouldn't be the same. They should probably have some different competences. And, for my example, I see, a lot of digital development going on at the moment, a lot, social media development. I think I'm fairly good at it, but still I keep on hiring people who know more than myself, simply because I need younger people who's actually, I feel like I'm 38, and when it comes to digital, I'm an old guy. I need to hire people who know more than me. I don't want to hire a copy of myself, but I need to hire people with different skills than what I have. To build a stronger team. So this is also like an important perspective, I think, when you build a team, that don't look for yourself. A lot of managers are still kind of copying their own skills and are extremely happy when they find someone who looks like themselves. But I think look at the roles, back to the roles again. What do you need in a team? And find people for the right roles. You should try to stay away from just moving people internally, because it's a comfortable thing to do. It's more important to find the right roles and get the people into the roles.
Have you ever encountered this? Maybe not on your own personal chair, but that managers have been scared to hire somebody who is actually more skilled than themselves.
Yeah. No, but I think I've seen that many times, and I can also be honest and say that I think when I was, maybe 10 years ago, I saw this differently. So I think it's also kind of a development of being a manager, that you kind of realize that this is not about me, this is about the team, and how the team actually functions. And, I think balance is also a good word in a team, how the team actually balance. I think, within my team in Stokke, I think we are 15 people in my big team, and I think it's like 8 or 9 different nationalities. There is a lot of competence in that team. but also a lot of different competences. So it's not, it doesn't feel like we have the same background. We have some, meeting points, I would say, when it comes to competence and background, but it is actually very different. And that is kind of what creates the energy and the synergy in the team.
Yeah. Okay. So people is the key resource, no doubt about that, and you wouldn't have achieved the things you have achieved in your career without having the skill set and the mindset to grow people and coach people to perform on a more than average level. I would say you don't get a nomination for the MAPIC awards if you don't have a team quite well functioning, I would imagine. So what is your take in general on retail at the moment, if I can ask? What are you noticing and stuff like that?
The last 2 years, I've spent a lot of time in Asia, especially China and Korea. I think I was in 2016. I was 10 times in Asia doing my job. So I think also going to especially China, seeing the developments which are going on in China has kind of also changed my perspective a little bit. Of course, there is a lot of focus at the moment on physical retailers losing sales to online retailers. I think this is kind of a more this of course will be an ongoing challenge, but I think people should start looking at the opportunities instead of just talking about the limitations. And I think there is a lot of opportunities with going into omnichannel, talking about unified commerce, how to make online stores and physical retail stores work together. And I think that will be probably over the next 10 years, this will be kind of be the biggest, in a way problem, but also in a way a possibility. It kind of depends on how you look at it. And for sure, some will succeed. Some retailers are already, they are already really good at this. Some will probably lose because they're not able to step up. They're still moving too slow. And I think, a chain like the US chain like Toys R Us, I guess that is like probably the most recent example of a retailer who didn't pay attention at all. And now Toys R Us are, very close to going bankrupt, which is strange because Toys R Us had they had a unique position in the toy market. But then 20 years ago, they decided, they don't believe in online sales, so they kind of gave it away to Amazon. They could have been probably the biggest Lego retailer in the world. They could, they had so many possibilities. And, 20 years later, they end up going bankrupt because no one really cares about their stores anymore. They're not relevant. People don't care about it. They will shop online instead. So my take on retail is that, there is 1 million opportunities, but there is also 1 million problems. It kind of depends on how you look at it. But I would like to focus on opportunities, of course. And I think there is a lot of opportunities out there. But people, they need to be open to new things and they need to be open for development.
Very interesting angle, and I like that twist on it. I don't know if you share this view on it. I agree with this. This is about looking at the opportunities or the challenges. And when we're talking about unifying online and offline stores and just let's just find a way where it's one word. We're operating a business here. It's just a combination that gives the synergy here. So I tend to have a lot of conversations these days with retailers who are very much focused on implementing and actually striving a lot to follow this technological development, if you could call it that. And that is, of course, a good thing, right? They're trying to step up. And the challenge I tend to talk with them about is that what about the people who are actually still on the floor, who has to transform this technology into increased consumer experience? There is a gap there. I see a lot that we need to take even more seriously along with this journey here. I don't know what your take on it.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I think when we talk about omnichannel or unified or digital configurators in stores, and there's a lot of cool things going on, like technically. But of course, then what people tend to forget is, of course, there's a couple of things that retailers tend to forget. First of all, is of course all these screens and tablets, they need to have content, and someone needs to create the content, and the computer is not going to create the content. That is probably people behind the computer is creating the content. So you can buy the OLED screens, or you can buy the most expensive tablets in the world, but if you don't have people with clear ideas, people with good content, it's not going to matter. It's going to be outdated in 10 minutes. And then I think, to address the other issue that you raised, what about the people in the stores? And I think this is probably going to be, for the store stuff, this is also almost going to be like a journey into future retail. It's also, we need to kind of rethink the way we do service. We have to rethink the way we treat our customers. We have to rethink mainly all the full culture about how we run our stores. So it is actually, I would say, like the easiest thing is, to buy the screens and buy the computers. That is probably the easiest things. And then there is a lot of suppliers.
That's the stroke of the pen.
It is actually very easy, but I think people have to kind of, take the helicopter perspective and say, okay, we buy these screens, but what are we going to use them for? How will this integrate with our staff? And what about the operational guidelines we made 2 years ago? How will we adjust the operational guidelines when we go into more omnichannel or unified commerce setup? And of course, the staff needs to be a big part of this. And if the staff is not, is not motivated, or doesn't, if the staff doesn't feel ownership to everything that's going on with digital and unified commerce, it will not succeed. And I think that is like the key. There need to be a bigger plan and a different helicopter perspective on this, how to do this as one company, and kind of quit talking about these, sales channels. Is it web? Is it physical retail? Where is the business coming from? I think it's, in the future it's only going to be one channel, and that is the business. And so there needs to be a culture around this, and I think the staff, the store staff, also need to be ready to develop maybe in a little bit different direction, and do the job a little bit differently than I did before. But we need to have a bigger perspective than only buying the screens, for sure.
Okay, so if you should give your best advice to any retailer operating any number of stores, what would, maybe will be a repetition of some of the things you've already mentioned, but what would be your best advice to a retailer today?
Actually, I did a keynote a couple of weeks ago at a big event in Norway, and I got a very similar question to this. I think many retailers have kind of been, they've been doing well for many years, maybe not knowing exactly why they were doing well, but, they had some nice products, people were coming to the stores, the stores were looking good. I think, first of all, all retailers have to open their mind to development. And I have to stop thinking about development as a problem. They have to change their mind and see development as an opportunity. That is like the first and foremost thing. And then there are some kind of, what would I do? I would buy a ticket, a flight ticket, and go to Korea. Yeah, that would be my, if you need a really direct advice, not only some vague stuff about looking into development, omnichannel, I will buy a flight ticket to Korea, and I would actually go around in Seoul to look at some of the best stores in Seoul, to see how they work, how they integrate digital. And I think after 1 week in Seoul, I think this will give you a different perspective on future retail, for sure. And then you're probably going to come back with a lot of ideas, and maybe instead of listening to a Scandinavian company telling you about ideas, maybe you kind of need to almost go to the source to see where everything is actually coming from. And then maybe you will have a different perspective. I think I have to say, the last 2 years traveling a lot in Asia, my perspective has changed dramatically. And I think we are still, even though we in Scandinavia, we think that we are technically advanced, and in some areas we are. But if you look to retail in cities like Seoul, Shanghai, Beijing, at the best retailers, there is a lot of things going on there that we haven't even seen yet. So I would. It could also be a lot of other cities or other retailers, but I think it's important to open, kind of have an open perspective, and looking at the opportunities instead of the problems. And I think some traveling could be a good idea for retailers who are willing to develop.
So when the listeners have listened to this podcast, and we see a big, dramatic increase in flight tickets going to Korea and Seoul, that's going to be your sales pitch that worked here.
No, it could be, but I just got a feeling when I did this keynote a couple of weeks ago at the Load event in Oslo. I got this feeling that a lot of these retailers, they are very focused on Scandinavia, which is probably totally fine because this is their kind of this key business area. But I think they have to open their mind to to input from other countries, other regions, and especially when you look to Korea, some of these Korean customers, I don't think they've seen cash money for many years. It's like it's very rare to see cash money anywhere, and if you go to China, even the beggars on the street, they have a QR code to get money. No one has cash. So they are actually using a QR code from WeChat to get their money now. So, and I haven't seen the beggars in Oslo yet with QR codes. So for sure, there are also some business development in that area. But
makes you reconsider if we're technically advanced, if the homeless are in a positive way of that having QR codes.
Yeah, it is actually. I think we, even though we think that we are technically advanced, and in some areas we truly are, but I think there is a lot of other countries, especially in Asia at the moment, which are moving, extremely fast. So I think good advice, do some traveling to open, to open the eyes and get a better perspective. I think that is actually really good advice, because you need to see it yourself, not only in a meeting room or at a PowerPoint. You need to be in the stores and see how it works. And I think you will have a lot of ideas about how you can develop your own business.
Okay, and let's then assume that I'm running a little retail store, or I have maybe 15, 20 stores. I might be able to scale it a little bit more. What would your advice be to those who might not have the possibility at the moment to fly to Korea? Or, of course, they have to be open-minded. Are there any specific advice to running their physical store at the moment?
It kind of, even though you don't have to, even though you don't have to travel anywhere, I think it comes back to kind of the perspective of being open for change and seeing change as a possibility. And of course, 2017, the world is also in many ways very transparent. It is pretty easy to kind of, get information about stuff. I think I actually my girlfriend is really frustrated with me because I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. And she spends her time on Facebook and Instagram, and that is mainly it's not because I'm looking for connections. It's mainly because I'm reading articles about companies that I follow, and then suddenly when I read about new stuff that it could be Alibaba or it could be Amazon or these kind of big companies that are testing physical stores, or they're testing new delivery points or pickup points. Actually, I get a lot of ideas which kind of relates to my own business. So this is kind of, there is a lot of information out there, if people are looking for it, I would say. And I think even though you have 15 stores, of course, you cannot do everything. And I think a lot of things that you will read about or you will see in Korea is not really relevant for your business, but it should be able to kind of to start a process about thinking about, how will my store develop into the future? How can we be a part of this? In many ways, I think it's, there's been more development the last 10 years in retail than almost like the 30 years before that. Because a lot of retailers were actually getting really comfortable, especially in the clothing industry, really comfortable of making, the same results every year, not really having to reinvest a lot of money. And I think at the moment now, it is time to reinvest, or it's almost a little bit too late. But it's for sure it is the time to reinvest and see how the business should be developed. So I think it's about being open to new perspectives and kind of looking for the information, looking at the biggest retailers, seeing what they do, and kind of bringing this into your business, into your context, and see how this could develop your business.
I think you're really striking on something that is a key thing that I'm also experiencing. I had a business owner of one store with a client I have, and the opportunity for this business is that it has been a very successful business for many, many years, just as you explained, and it's still going quite okay, but you know where it's going. And the person has an opportunity to actually move the physical store where it's been located for 30 years. Move it to another location in that town. And it's like, for that business owner, that decision, it's a big, big decision at the moment. Do I see where do I see my business going? Do I dare to take this reinvestment? And I think a lot of small business owners are in this middle of this whirlwind right now. I don't have any numbers on this, but it's just my experience of talking to some business owners.
I think it's so somewhere, if you put it dramatically, it's you can say like develop or die.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, I don't know this case, with moving the locations and anything, but and maybe maybe they can stay where they are, or maybe they should move. I don't know. But I think it's, at least what I see from Norway, I see that the retailers who have been smart enough, when they have been making money, instead of buying a big house in Spain, they kind of reinvested the money into their own business to develop the business. And I think coming to retail in 2017, I think there's if you're going to succeed in the future, you will have to develop, you will have to reinvest, you will have to follow the trends more closely. We see a more enormous amount of marketing money shifting from the newspapers and television into social media, Facebook, Instagram, WeChat, whatever. And I think it's maybe before it was a question about, do we want to be on Facebook or do we want to be on Instagram and stuff like this? You shouldn't ask that question anymore. You simply will have to follow the trends. And I think there is a big shift for a lot of retailers. They used to be able kind of to dictate the trends themselves in their cities or countries. What we see now is much more like a global trend, and they actually becoming more like followers. They need to follow the trends, and if they don't follow the trends, they will die. So this is actually a big shift, but I also have a lot of understanding for retailers, who has been successful for many years. That is difficult just to change their mind. This is not an easy one for sure. And of course, if you have been successful with running your business with one model, and people are coming into telling you to change that model, I can also understand that they are skeptical about it. But they have to open their eyes and follow the trends and be open to development for sure. And then it comes back to develop or die in a way, because I don't think that a retail concept which were working fine in maybe in 2004 will be there in 2030. The concept simply needs to develop.
So, Bård, we've been talking a lot about many things, and a couple of minutes ago you actually opened and mentioned the load event that you had a speech on recently, and I actually want to go a little bit more back to that, if that's okay. You were invited to give a speech back there at the load event, which is like the biggest Norwegian, what would you call it, retail and online sales seminar? Can you call it?
Yeah, it is. It is actually the biggest one. It is hosted by the logistics company Bring. And it was actually a really interesting experience. I think historically a lot of the focus on this event has been on online sales. But they have also realized that it's not going to be about online sales in the future. It's going to be about unified commerce. It's not going to be about channels. It's more about how and where do we sell our products. But it's going to be one channel, and that is kind of from the retailer to the consumer. And so they kind of also changed their perspective a little bit. But what I spoke about, of course, and also the things that I think they thought was really interesting. Unified commerce was, of course, one perspective, and that is a little bit coming back to Stokke opening stores last year, both in Shanghai, Beijing, Seoul. And kind of realizing, what we need to do to be relevant in that market, relevant for our consumers. And we also spoke a lot about. I spoke a lot about global expansion and kind of how to develop a brand also in different countries and how to set it up. Mm-hmm. So, and of course, the Norwegian retailers are extremely interested in knowing more about, what's going on in China, what kind of developments are we seeing, what kind of trends should we be aware of. And I think that kind of goes for, coming back to what we spoke about earlier too. I think that goes for a lot of retailers, that they are, positively curious about the future. And, in some areas, I think the future is already here. So it's actually possible to see some of the things that we will do in the future, especially the unified commerce.
So very, very, very interesting. And again, I must say that from my being a colleague with you many years ago, and meeting you a couple of times, I'm pretty sure that your name and recognition has not only stopped in bestseller. It seems like you are a growing retail figure for the Norwegian market, and I must say it's very interesting to hear all your thoughts and experiences in this field. So thank you for all these inputs and things. Are there any things we should look for in the future of retail besides the things you've said? Are there like a company that you're really like, these we need to look out for?
I have a couple of like my own favorites, which is both work related, but also a little bit like going into private. I would say there is a couple of companies. Of course, you have the really big ones like Amazon and Alibaba, which is, they have, unlimited resources, and they are testing and developing stuff all the time, which I think, people should pay attention to, because they are, leaders in the industry, but a little bit more down to earth. There is a company called Dyson, if you know them. Dyson, they are selling not really sexy products in a way, but they are selling vacuum cleaners and hair dryers and fans, stuff like this. And I think the biggest difference, of course, if you compare Dyson to Electrolux or Husqvarna, who it should be, they actually have a really, really nice retail concept. Extremely nice, I would say. I think it's partly inspired by Apple retail. They use a lot of digital screens in stores in a very relevant way. They do demos on the floor. And everything they do is about innovation and about kind of showing the features of the product for the consumer. And they're actually, they're able to take double price for the vacuum cleaners compared to the competitors, because they actually have a really, really strong brand. And, everything they do comes back to innovation and being leaders in their market. So it's not only about kind of, vacuum, and actually making vacuum cleaning a sexy thing. Which is really impressive. They're kind of taking boring products and putting it into a good setting, and then suddenly the products are really interesting. So I'm really admiring these guys, because they have a difficult job, but they're doing it really well.
I like the angle of that somebody's making vacuum cleaning a sexy thing to buy. That's okay.
But it's you should check it out. So that's Dyson, and they are. I know them a little bit from Asia, because they were actually opening in Beijing at the same time as Stokke. I spoke to the global expansion manager, and they are, they're opening in London, they're opening in Hong Kong, they're opening all over the world now. And of course, you can also buy their products in Elgiganten or Elkjøp in Norway. But when you go to one of their flagship stores, you will have a totally different experience of the products and the ideas behind it, the innovation. I think this is also kind of a trend that people should be aware of, that some of these multi-brand brands They would like to make their own stores to kind of have a better showroom for the products, to kind of be able to explain more about the background, innovation, the design than they're able to do in a multi-brand store like Elkjøp or Elgiganten. So that was one. And the other one I was thinking about is actually a clothing retailer called Suit Supply. And they are coming to Scandinavia now. I think I just saw on LinkedIn yesterday that they're working on opening a store in Stockholm. And I think Suit Supply, they are kind of, it's not that far away from Selected, the bestseller brand Selected. They are actually doing, they're doing tailor-made suits, but at a reasonable price level. They're kind of coming in, they're coming in at the mid-price level, but very highly focused on design. It's a very strong brand with a lot of almost like aggressive marketing around it. And what's the most impressive to me is that they have a unique combination of online sales and physical sales. So they have all the kind of functionality about ordering online, picking up. They have you can use a chat function online to get advice about how to combine the products. You can schedule an appointment in the stores. You can pick up in the stores, or you could buy it in the stores and get home delivery. They have all this kind of functionality, and they are fully integrated.
So the incentives going back and forth throughout the channels has already been in place.
Supply, they're already there. Yeah. They have beautiful showrooms, but to them it doesn't matter. If you pay with WeChat Pay or if you pay with your Diners card or your Amex card or where they deliver. This is one channel. This is unified commerce. So I think they are also, if people want to look for a retailer who is doing this really well, I think Suit Supply could actually be a really good example to go and see and try to be a customer and try to experience how they do it. They are also really, really good on customer service in stores. I don't know their kind of academy or education program in detail, but I visited many of their stores, and I think it's easy to see these guys have a plan with what they're doing. I never experienced not being greeted or not getting service in one of their stores, and so I think they invest a lot in training, and they also invest a lot in resources in keeping people motivated and keeping the staff running and being there for the customers. So I think Suit Supply is an interesting example.
So Bård, we've been talking for a little over an hour now, and I hope that I have to thank you a lot for sharing all these experiences and inputs for retailers alike who listen to this podcast. And I hope that the success will continue to follow you. I think you are a big asset to the retail industry in Norway, and I think I'm honored that you wanted to share a little bit of this on the Retail Conversations podcast. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me, Morten. It was a pleasure.